I need to type this out. I'm shaking so hard my fingers are blurring the keys. But I need to document this. I need to look at the words and prove to myself that this actually happened and I'm not just losing my mind from grief and betrayal. I just need to confess to the universe that my life exploded this week. This isn't about a bad date or an awkward social faux pas. This is about Sarah, my so-called best friend of 20 years, the woman who was supposed to be my sister, my chosen family. And this is about my mother's jewelry, the only pieces of her I had left after she passed away last year. My mother's death was brutal. Cancer, fast, and unforgiving. The grief has been a tidal wave I'm still learning to swim through. The one comfort, the only tangible link I had left was her jewelry box. Inside were 3 pieces: a delicate gold locket with a tiny etched flower, which she wore every single day, a simple pearl necklace, a gift from my father on their first anniversary, and a heavy gold signet ring with a sapphire, a family heirloom that dated back 3 generations. These weren't necessarily worth a fortune in monetary terms, but they were priceless to me. They were my inheritance, my relics, my mother's scent clinging faintly to the velvet lining of the box. I had major surgery scheduled this week, a complicated, necessary procedure that had been postponed twice. I was terrified, truly terrified, and I needed someone to be there for me, someone to handle the logistics, someone to just breathe for me while I was under the knife. Sarah volunteered. "Don't worry about a thing, sweetie," she'd said, clutching my hand in the hospital waiting room, looking every bit the concerned, devoted friend. "I'll handle the house, I'll feed the cat, I'll be right here when you wake up. You focus on getting better." I trusted her implicitly. I told her the hidden spare key location. I gave her the alarm code. Crucially, I told her about the small, fireproof safe hidden behind a painting in my bedroom, which contains my sensitive documents and the jewelry box. I asked her to please check on it, just to ease my mind, knowing the house would be empty for days. "Of course," she replied, squeezing my hand again. "It's the first thing I'll do. Get some sleep. I love you." I went under the anesthesia with those words ringing in my ears. I love you. The surgery went well, thankfully, but my recovery was rough. I was in a haze of pain and medication for 3 days. When I finally woke up and could hold a conversation, Sarah was nowhere to be seen. Her husband, Mark, showed up instead. Mark is a good guy, quiet, works hard, but he's always been slightly overwhelmed by Sarah's high-maintenance lifestyle. He looked pale, stressed, and kept checking his phone nervously. "Hey, Mark, where's Sarah?" I mumbled, still groggy. He avoided my eyes. She had to go out of town. Something came up, an emergency thing with a relative." My stomach clenched, but I dismissed it as hospital paranoia. "Oh, okay. Well, tell her thank you for checking on the safe. I really appreciate her doing that." Mark suddenly looked like he'd been slapped. His eyes widened and he swallowed hard. The safe? Yeah, I'm sure she did. Look, I just can't stay long. I have a lot of work. Can I get you anything?" He mumbled an excuse and bolted out of the room faster than a greyhound. That whole exchange felt wrong, so incredibly wrong. I finally got home yesterday, weak and exhausted, leaning heavily on my walker. The first thing I did, the very first thing before even changing out of my hospital gown, was shuffle into the bedroom and go straight to the painting. The safe was there, thankfully, unlocked and slightly ajar.
My heart sunk, a sickening free-fall sensation. I opened it. My important documents were still there, thankfully. My will, my insurance papers, but the little velvet box with the 3 precious pieces of jewelry? Gone. Vanished. I stood there, leaning against the wall, stitches pulling, the searing emotional pain immediately eclipsing the physical pain. I felt hollowed out, violated. I immediately called Sarah. I was shaking so hard I could barely dial. She answered on the second ring, sounding annoyingly cheerful. "Oh, hey! Back from the wars! How are you feeling, sweetie?" "Where is it, Sarah?" I asked, my voice flat, deadly calm. "Where is it? What, honey? Your house key? It's under the mat, like you asked." "No, the jewelry box, the locket, the pearls, my mother's signet ring. It's gone, and the safe is open. You were the only one with access." Silence. Long, heavy, guilty silence. Then a sudden shift in her voice, a defensive, aggressive snap. "Okay, look, don't start with me, okay? I needed the money." "You what? You sold my mother's jewelry while I was under anesthesia, the family heirlooms?" "It wasn't that big of a deal. It was just a few old pieces of metal. You never even wear them, and I needed a loan. I'll pay you back, I swear, as soon as Mark gets his bonus." "A loan? Sarah, you sold my mother's locket, which she was buried wearing a replica of. What could possibly be so urgent that you had to liquidate my dead mother's memory while I was literally fighting for my life?" This is where the betrayal took a sharp turn into the abyss. She hesitated, then spat it out, the truth uglier than any lie she could have invented. "I needed cash for the Pebble Beach trip. Mark and his buddies were going, and I needed to pay my half of the chartered flight and the resort fees. He was stressing about the cost, and I wanted to surprise him. It was supposed to be a romantic gesture. You just don't understand how much pressure he's under." A golf trip. She had sold my mother's legacy, the pieces I held onto in the dark nights of grief, to pay for a luxury golf getaway for her husband? Not a medical bill, not a rent payment, but a lavish, unnecessary vacation. I hung up. I physically couldn't speak another word without screaming. I collapsed onto the edge of the bed and wept. Not just for the jewelry, but for the loss of 20 years of friendship. For the brutal realization that the person I trusted most had seen my vulnerability not as a reason for protection, but as an opportunity for theft. A few hours later, my phone started buzzing furiously, texts and calls, mostly from Sarah. The tone had shifted entirely from defensive to aggressive. "Sarah, 4:05 p.m. Look, I said I was sorry. I'll pay you back. Stop being so dramatic. I'm going to send you the money when I get it." Sarah, 4:15 p.m. "You're making a huge deal out of this. You know how stressed I've been. I feel totally unappreciated for everything I've done for you. Who watched your chat? Who took your mail?" Sarah, 4:30 p.m. "I've been there for you through thick and thin. You are being selfish. You never appreciated me. Honestly, you owe me an apology for making me feel like a thief when I was just trying to do something nice for my husband." That last text, that was the final punch in the gut. She wanted me to apologize for her theft, for her betrayal. The rage was no longer hot. It was cold, precise, and surgical. I looked at the dark stain still visible on my couch cushion, a remnant of my recent trauma, and I knew what I had to do. This wasn't about the money anymore. This was about justice for my mother and justice for myself. And I knew exactly who held the real power to execute that justice? Mark, her husband, the one who thought the Pebble Beach trip was cheap, who had been stressing about the cost, the one who had looked sick when I mentioned the safe. I had always known their financial situation was more precarious than their Instagram feed suggested. Sarah lived for the show, and Mark was quietly drowning in the debt required to keep up appearances. He thought the Pebble Beach trip was expensive, but I knew he wouldn't realize how expensive until he knew the true cost of her romantic gesture. I opened a new text message to Mark, crafting the message meticulously. Me. Mark, this is Becky. I know Sarah told you she funded the Pebble Beach trip with savings or something. That's a lie.
The signet ring and the locket covered the resort fees and the rest of the bill. It wasn't a loan. It was theft, and she did it the day after I was wheeled into surgery. I watched his face crumble as the reality sunk in. It wasn't just that she stole. It was the layering of betrayal. She stole from my dead mother's daughter while she was incapacitated, then lied to her husband, using the theft to buy his affection and maintain a fantasy life. The family drama theme had reached its zenith, not just in my life, but in theirs. I asked her again right now, Mark choked out, tears finally breaking through his anger. She didn't deny it. She said you never appreciated the sacrifice she made to deal with your sickness and that you deserved to pay her back for all the stress. There it was, the entitlement, the final disgusting attempt to twist the narrative into my fault. She saw my illness, my grief, and my vulnerability as a debt I owed her, and she collected it in the form of my most precious memories. Mark stood up, wiping his eyes. I'm calling a divorce lawyer, Beth, tonight. I can't look at her. I can't look at this house. I'm so sorry. I'm going to find out where she sold it, and I will get you every single penny back. But I need you to understand that I had no idea. I nodded, utterly exhausted. The relief of having the truth out almost too much to bear. I know, Mark. I know. The next few weeks were a maelstrom of legal paperwork. Mark filed immediately, citing financial misconduct and emotional distress. Sarah tried to fight back, sending me long, hysterical emails demanding I recant my lies and apologize for destroying her marriage. She actually sent one email with the subject line, "Your mother's things weren't worth my marriage." I never responded. I only communicated through my lawyer, who happily provided Mark's lawyer with the pawn shop receipt and the final damning text. The dramatic resolve came 2 months later. Mark, with the help of his mother and a very determined lawyer, managed to track down the major purchaser of the sapphire signet ring, an H-end estate jeweler, not a pawn shop, proving she'd been calculating about the sale. He got a partial recovery of the cash, enough to cover the full appraised value of the 3 items, plus the legal fees. He immediately transferred the money to my account. I was grateful for the cash, but nothing could replace the locket. The ultimate justice, however, wasn't monetary. Sarah was forced to move out of their home, the lavish house she'd gone into debt to maintain, and Mark got full control of their shared assets, which mostly consisted of debt that she had racked up to fund their lifestyle. I finally saw Sarah one last time, completely by chance at a grocery store. She looked hollowed out, wearing cheap clothes, a far cry from the designer labels she used to parade. She spotted me, and her face twisted into a mask of pure hate. "Are you happy now?" she hissed, walking straight up to me. "You ruined my life. I lost everything just because of some old sentimental junk." I looked her dead in the eye, clutching my walker, my recovery a testament to my resilience. "I didn't lose everything because of junk, Sarah. I lost everything because you priced my mother's memory at the cost of a chartered flight.
You lost everything because you thought my vulnerability was your bank account. And you lost everything because you wanted an apology from your victim. I survived cancer and your betrayal. You just survived a golf trip. I turned my back and walked away, not looking back, heading toward the dairy aisle. I was still weak, still recovering, but I was strong. The last remnant of that toxic friendship, the relationship betrayal that had defined the hardest year of my life, was finally, irrevocably gone. I replaced the jewelry blocks with a photo album of my mother, and I knew that was the only inheritance that truly mattered.